Imagine a population so brainwashed that you could convince them to be terrified of a virus that they've never seen, while spraying them daily in broad daylight in the sky, only for them to deny it's happening to them because no one on TV told them it was.
Geoengineering means climate engineering and climate mitigation. It means to play God with the weather. The primary methods of engineering the climate is to fill the atmosphere with light scattering particulates that are sprayed from the back of jet aircraft. We know many of these particulates are heavy metals. We know that from testing from around the globe.
Stratospheric aerosol injection, a method of seeding the stratosphere, often referred to collectively as geoengineering.
Chemtrails. Trails left by aircraft are actually chemical or biological agents deliberately sprayed at high altitudes for a purpose undisclosed to the general public in clandestine programs directed by government officials.
You could actually spray sulfuric acid in the stratosphere 20 kilometers over our head and use that to stop the planet warming up in a ugly tech fix.
You could spray something into the atmosphere to change.
Spray pollution.
Bill Gates thinks of himself as God, in control of the solar system. And that's why Bill Gates is now backing something called sun-dimming technology that would reflect sunlight out of the Earth's atmosphere, causing global cooling. Ooh, that's not fraught with risks. You thought gain-of-function research on pathogens was dangerous. Try that. But that doesn't stop Harvard University. Its scientists are testing that technology by spewing calcium carbonate dust into the atmosphere.
Bill Gates is backing the first high-altitude experiment of one radical climate change solution, creating a massive chemical cloud that could cool the Earth. It's called solar geoengineering.
The primary method of solar radiation management. The stated purpose to block some of the sun's incoming thermal radiation to try to slow down the greenhouse effect that's happening on our planet from the buildup of greenhouse gases. So we have aircraft dispersing light scattering particles all over the globe. It's creating a condition that's termed global dimming.
This is not just weather warfare, it's also biological warfare. The amount of elements we're inhaling, to give some quantification to that, recent air studies indicate that we may be breathing millions of nanoparticles in every single breath we take. And to put the size of those particles into context, you can fit up to 100,000 nanoparticles across the width of a single human hair. So these are unimaginably small particles, which makes them very bioavailable, very bioaccumulative. Every person we test, Garth, hair, blood, urine, is packed with aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese. These are all very toxic. You combine them, it's even worse. It's not a good situation.
For the next pandemic, we'll solve all those problems.
You say the next pandemic. There will be another pandemic.
Absolutely. We don't know when. You know, the risk per year, 2%, 3%.
The next pandemic, and there will be one. There will absolutely be an outbreak of another pandemic.
We definitively will have to face other surprises, black swans, as they are called, maybe different kinds of viruses.
But also there will be a surprise outbreak.
Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1.
The pleasant surprises which will come in our way.
Why do you think that it's being done? Why do you think governments and the military, because there seems to be a military involvement in it, why do you think they're doing this?
I think maybe the more appropriate question would be, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't we expect them to do this when climate engineering is a covert weapon for the controllers, a weapon with which they can bring populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault? And this is why, when we go back even 62 years, as I commonly reference, the start to our weekly commercial-free, non-political update at geoengineeringwatch.org, it's called Global Alert News. We're on stations across the U.S. And the beginning of that broadcast, it's on the homepage of geoengineeringwatch.org, the first 20 seconds from 62 years ago, U.S. President Lyndon Johnson, on film, on the record, ranting like a lunatic, stating we had the power to control the world's cloud layer even then, and quote, "He who controls the weather controls the world." So the ultimate answer to your question is it is about power and control. And people commonly ask them, why would they do this to themselves? And We have enough examples of what they've already done to themselves to understand we're not dealing with sanity. We're dealing with power addicts, and they're not going to stop utilizing that power until there's nothing left unless we stop them.
How could chemtrails cause mind control? Well, what people don't realize is that your consciousness is governed by light. Light comes in through your eyes and hits your pineal gland.
You have to have that.
And you have to have it. And the pineal gland is the center of consciousness. It's the center of the soul, Descartes said. Okay? And so light, the color of light, changes your consciousness. And if the sun is changing, then it's possible that our consciousness is changing. It could be that the changing nature of the sun over the last 20 years is what's causing the Great Awakening that's happening. And they know that the Great Awakening is happening. Previous to our other conversation about archons, what if the archons realized that the changing nature of the sun was going to wake people up and they're going to find out about them? What do? That's what they do. They spray the skies.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. I have a friend who just was traveling through Europe last week, 2 weeks straight in Europe. I go to Europe all the time. I used to never see chemtrails in Europe. He said the skies were filled with them. I have a friend who lives in South Africa, Michael Tellinger. Same thing. He tells me the skies are filled with chemtrails.
Bill to ban climate engineering is now the law. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has now signed into law the recently approved Senate and House legislation to ban climate engineering over the state of Tennessee.
Intentional injection, release, or dispersion by any means of chemicals, chemical compound substances, or apparatus within the borders of this state into the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight is prohibited.
This is the first bill of its kind to be passed into law. Governor Bill Lee, Senator Steve Sutherland, Representative Monty Fritz, and all their co-sponsors each deserve our deepest gratitude for their heroic actions in the face of staunch establishment resistance to this critically important legislation. Testimony from experts like Dr. Denise Sibley and Dr. David Perry was essential to this effort, along with all the help from behind the scenes.
Heavy metals have been detected in rainwater samples that contain dangerous substances such as strontium, barium, aluminum, and sulfur. We do not consent to this experimentation on our atmosphere and our citizens. Blocking the sun would affect our crops with potential famine, deforestation, and blocking of vitamin D production.
Insufficient sun exposure has become a real health problem. The reason that the honeybees are going away is because of the microcosm that they live in is affected by these aerosols.
Other states have tried unsuccessfully to pass similar legislation, but the Tennessee bill draft should now become the standard as it was carefully crafted in the most straightforward and effective form.
They are located in Gakona, Alaska. The project is called HARP.
HARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
HARP is comprised of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere.
The amount of energy we're talking about here is 3.6 million watts, injecting their entire output into a spot that's about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by about 90 miles up.
This is where HARP is pointing. It's an area located roughly 300 miles from Anchorage. The U.S. military says HARP is merely being used to study the physical and electrical properties and behavior of the ionosphere for both civilian and defense purposes. Another theory is surfaced. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HARP is actually heating up the atmosphere, causing weather changes.
HARP is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
HARP is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. The United States owns and operates 3 of them, one in Gakona, Alaska, another in Fairbanks, Alaska, and one in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Russia has one in Vasilursky near Nizhny Novgorod, and the European Union has one near Tromsø in Norway. Working in tandem, these transmitters could potentially alter the weather anywhere in the world, changing the jet stream's course entirely, triggering massive rainstorms or droughts. Even hurricane steering would be possible by heating up the atmosphere and building up high-pressure domes that could deflect or change the course of hurricanes.
Imagine a population